Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is Arnel Aranques, and in this video tutorial, we'll be discussing how to do search operation in DataGrid using C Winforms. Okay, but before that, please subscribe to my channel, Code Eater TV. Click the notification bell so that you'll be notified for my future video tutorial. Okay, let's start. One common mistake by a new programmer in creating search operation in DataGrid is that they will create a code inside the search text box and then create a query that will directly fetch the data based on the text available in the text box. Okay? Basically, there's no problem with that with respect to syntax, but it is not efficient if you will have a table that has multiple rows. Say, for example, more or less 1,000 table, 1,000 rows, or 100,000 rows. Okay, that will really make your application heavy. Okay, one efficient way of doing that is by utilizing the select method of a data table. Remember, data table could be used as the data source of our data grid. Okay, now what is the work of a select method in a data table? Basically, you are creating a query, a select query not into our data table, a database, but into our data table. And then we can create an expression and then filter our data table based on that expression. And then whatever the result of that will be, we can put the result into another data table and make that new data table as our data source to our data grid. So that's basically how we can create filter operation in data grid without um, creating or fetching data directly to the database every time the user type any text inside our text box. Okay, so how can we do that one? Okay, so as you can see here in our form, we have a search text box, and then we have a data grid, and then we have three radio button. In there we have start with, contains, or ends with. Okay, so basically what we're trying to achieve now is to create a search operation in our data grid based on the three criteria that we have. We will search the certain word into our data grid by starts with, contains, or ends with. Okay, so how to do that one? Okay, so the first thing that we will do is, of course, we need to fetch data into our database. Now, what will be fetching a data into our database? We need to fetch um, all of the available rows into a certain table, and then put that one into our data table and make that one as the original data source of our data table, data grid. And then we will filter that data table based on the text that is available within the text box. And then whatever the result of that filtering, we will put that one into our data table, and that new data table will be the new data source of our data grid. Okay, so since we'll be fetching data into our database, I already created um, data table and then a MySQL adapter, and then I already created one method which is a set grid column width method. Basically, it is just a method that will set the columns of our data grid to make so that we will make our data grid more presentable. Okay, so that's the set grid column width method. Later on, we will use that one. Okay, again, we have now our new data table and then our MySQL adapter since we want to fetch data into our database. Okay, so let's start. Okay, first step is to create our MySQL connection. Okay, and our MySQL connection needs a connection string. Okay, this is where we will put the settings, database settings, and wherein we put the host, the username, the password, the port number, and then the database name. Okay, so we will create our MySQL connection and then put our connection string into our MySQL connection. Okay, then we will open the connection. Then after that, the next thing that we'll do is to create our MySQL command. Remember, in creating a MySQL command, we need to set the connection and then the command text. The command text is where we will put our query. Okay? So since we already have our MySQL connection, we will use that one as the connection of our MySQL command. Okay? And then after that, set our command text. Okay, I already created a query wherein we will display the product and then the products category and then the unit. Remember, the products, we will be fetching all the products available in the product table. Okay, so as you can see here, I already created a query. Basically, this query will get all the products available in the products table and then set the name, the category, and then the unit. Okay, so after that, we will be using the data adapter and then set our MySQL command as the data adapter's select command, and then we will call the fill method of the data adapter so that we can fetch the data using the MySQL command and put that data into our data table. Okay, after invoking the fill method of the data adapter, we will call the accept changes of the data table so that it will reflect the changes that happened after we create or we call the fill method of our data adapter. Now we already have, in this code, we have our data. All you need to do is to put that data into the data table, which we already did, and then after that, we'll set that data table as the data source of our data grid. Okay, so let's call our data grid, which is the product grid, and then set the data source as the source, which is our data table. Okay, so let's try if it works. Okay, so as you can see here, we have the name one, and basically the name one there is the category of our product. So let's change that one. Okay, so instead of name, let's call it as category. Remember, name is a T2, that name is the category's name. So we change that one as a category, and then now we can use our set column width method. Okay, as you can see there, the column header of the category is now category instead of name. Okay, so we will be calling the set grid column. Okay, so that we can make our grid more presentable. Okay, remember, we set the first column, the second column, the third columns with inside our set grid column width method. Okay, so we are done with fetching all available product in the data grid. Okay, the next thing that we will do is to create or to filter the data grid based on the text available in the search text box. Okay, to do that one, we need to create a code inside the text box text change event. So every time the user put or type certain text in the text box, we will filter the data grid based on the text available in the text box. Okay, so to do that one, again, we need to use the data table's select method. Okay, so now, how does a select method work in the data table? Basically, we are creating a select, and then we'll put the criteria or the filtering criteria inside the select method of the data table. Like, so for example, we want to filter our data table based on the name's value. Remember, the name there refers to the product's name. Okay? So, like, say, for example, we want to filter our product based on the name, as long as, say, for example, we put any product name that has a value of letter A or letter B. So, we'll filter all our data grid based on that criteria, and then whatever the result, we will put that one into our data row, and then using that data row, we'll copy the data row into a new data table and make that new data table as our data source. Okay? So, basically, this is the syntax of creating an expression that will filter our data table. Okay? First is the name of the column, which is here we put their name, and then we have like. We can also use equal sign if we want to filter the data table based on a specific value. But here, since we are creating a search operation, so we will be using like. So every name in the product table which has a value of something, like for example A or B or C, then we will use that expression to filter our data table. Okay, remember we put there two single quote, and then inside the two single quote we have two percent sign, and then in between the 2% sign is the search box text dot text. Ibig sabihin nun, it means we will be filtering the data table, or we will be filtering the products table, wherein the name, under the column name, we will search whatever text available in the search text box. Okay? The percent sign there works as our filtering, this one, filtering mechanism. Okay? So, we have there 2% sign. It means we will search the search box text, the text value into our name column of our data table, as long as whether it could be either before or after any other text. Okay, so that we put there a percent sign. Okay, so let's try if these things work. But for that, again, we need to put that one into a data row. Okay, so and then after setting putting the result value into our data row, then we will copy the data row into our new data table. And to do that we will be calling the data rows method, which is copy to data table method. Okay, so it will convert the data row into a data table, and then put that value into a certain or into our new data table. Okay, after that, we will set the data grids data source to our new data table. Okay, so let's try if it works. Okay, so we have here our methods. I mean, our data grid. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows or 6 products. So let's try to search. So for example, we will type T. Okay, as you can see there, it will automatically filter our grid. So any product that has a letter T will be the result of our search. Okay, so let's try another one. Okay, R. What else? Okay, so we type there Q. Okay, and as a result, our project returns an error. Okay, what is the problem with this? Basically, it means that the research, after we filter our data table, the filtering mechanism doesn't return any row available in the data table. As a result, it will produce it will produce an error. Because of that, we will change or modify our code. Okay, what we will do is that we need to check first if the search result data row returns any row. Okay, to do that one, we will need to call the length method of the data row so that we can identify if there's an available row in our data row. Okay, so let's modify our code. Okay, so if search result.length is not equals to 0, then we will get the result and put that one into our data table, and then set our new data table as the DataGrid's data source. Okay, so that it will not create an error if our search result data row doesn't have any row. Okay, so but to produce an empty grid, what we need to do is to create or copy our original data source and then to our new data table, and then after that we need to clear the rows of that new data table, so that if we will put that one as the data source of our data grid, then it will produce an empty grid, because that basically the data table has or doesn't have any rows. Okay, so to do that one, again, create our data table, and then we need to clone. Okay, we need to clone our data source and then put that one as put that value into our new data table, which is the new source. Okay, so basically that's the way how to copy a data table and then put that one into a new data table. We need to call the clone method of the data table. Basically, it's just a copy paste. Okay, so after that, we clear the row of our data table and then put the new data table as the data source of our data grid. Okay, as a result, okay, we will search any text there that is not available in all the products name, then it will print or it will produce an empty grid. Okay, as you can see, since all products name doesn't have Q, then we produce an empty grid. Okay, so the next thing that we will do is to invoke the starts with, the contains, and the ends with. Okay, so let's try to change first the ends with rad grid. It doesn't have a space. Okay, so let's try. So let's modify our code. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is to create an if-else statement. Okay, so what will happen if the user selects the starts with? What will happen if the user selects the contains with? Or what will happen if the user will select the ends with? Okay, so here we are now creating an expression. Okay, as you can see, instead of enclosing the search text box, doc text into a two percent sign, what we are now having is an expression that has only 1% sign, which is after the search text box doc text. Remember, and this will be the expression that we'll be using if the user will select the start with radio button. Okay, so it means we will search, the criteria of our search is that any name that starts with the search text box text value, then we will put that one into our data grid as the search result. Okay, and then the second expression, okay, just like our original expression, because it means all product name that has, or that could either be, that starts with or ends with a search text box text. Okay, and then of course in the last expression we will put the percent sign at the end portion, or the start portion of our expression, because basically it means that all product names that ends with search text box text. Okay, so let's try to check if it works. And then what we need to do is to put our expression as the expression of our select method. Okay, so let's try to check. Okay, so if we will type, okay, C, so it will produce Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola is the only product that starts with letter C. Okay, S, A, now let's try with the contains. Okay. Okay, so CO, so it will produce all of the product name that contains CO product product name. Okay, we have Coca-Cola, which has CO, then corned beef, Argentina corned beef, and holiday corned beef because it has CO. Okay, so let's try to check the ends with. Okay, so beef, okay, cola. Okay, so ends with up. Okay, so it produces 7 up. Okay, so okay, so flavor, so it produces Lakimi Pancit Canton original flavor because it is the only product that ends with flavor. Okay, product's name. Okay, basically that's it. That's one of the efficient way of creating search operation in DataGrid. Hope you guys learned something from me. Keep coding. Thank you and keep sharing my video, guys. Thank you. God bless.